Okay, everyone, get ready for this amazing, beautiful powerhouse, Josefina Bashout. She is heating things up. Josefina is a women's leadership coach, feminine health advocate, sensuality advocate, feminine empowerment expert, and international speaker. She brings such a beautiful light to a topic that has been left in the dark, which is the importance of sensuality and connecting with our divine feminine power and self-love. Josefina helps us understand when we lose our connection to ourselves, our feminine energy, our sensuality, our self-care, and become overpowered by the masculine energy, which I know I've struggled with in the past, which is too much hustling, too much chasing, too much working, too much do. We lose ourselves, and here's the clincher, that's when we start grabbing for food. Why is that? Because we are soothing a separation from our true selves. Because when we have lost a connection to something deeper, which is our divine essence, our feminine power, we disconnect from something beautiful and sacred. You get to come along as she shares her heartbreaking story of childhood trauma, her journey of healing, and how she turns this pain into beautiful purpose. So she's here to reawaken, reconnect, and remind us that the only feminine icon we need is the one in the mirror. So Josefina, welcome to What We Crave.
Yay, yay, yay. Yes, girl. Thank you. So happy to be here and so happy to be in this conversation that's really needed right now at this pivotal time in the world globally. So thank you for choosing to go into this conversation and relate sensuality, sexuality, feminine power to a gap that I feel is not illuminated, which is directing to eating disorders and food and that disconnection. So thanks so much for creating the space, babe.
It's an honor. And your story, girlfriend, is a gift. You are the definition of human resilience. It's incredible. So tell us about you and how you arrived here today.
Well, I have arisen and I have rise from the ashes of my own past of pain. And I love how you said turning pain into purpose and into passion. I add, and I'll put pleasure because pain and pleasure are two sides of the same coin. And without this pain that has shaped me, I would not be the woman that I am today in full reverence and gratitude and honor of self. And my journey, growing up here, born and raised in Los Angeles, California, which is where I am now, the part of me was when I think about the story and when I think about the narrative of how I want to share the story, I'm getting really present to how powerful our words are and how connected I am to the story. Even that alone, it's tell your story. Okay, go, this automation story. But tuning into my story that's relevant to what is being happened and had here. And what I feel is important to share is growing up in a Middle Eastern family, a very traditional Egyptian and Lebanese family, where your sexuality is repressed, your sensuality is shamed. You have to live in a very submissive feminine role to take care of the household and the man and the superiority complex and the narcissistic framework of the unconscious masculine that goes on across the board for an older generation. Now coming into a new generation, it's different, but my parents were immigrants from the Middle East and they brought over those old world cultures and that unconscious way of being. And so growing up, I was punished through corporal punishment, through physical abuse, through my dad, through my mom. I would get in arguments with my sisters. And so I was in a traumatic home, like many of us are. We have abusive parents that just don't know what they're doing. They're trying to control the best that they can. And they just don't have the tools. They're not equipped. Right. And so going into that created a very traumatic experience. My dad was very abusive to my mom. And so from a very early age, I saw that her expressing herself, her sensuality, her love, just trying to be more free out of the box that he's putting her in, she would be punished physically and pretty brutally. And that's something that always stuck with me. And at a very young age, I tried to not rebel, but run around barefoot or be expressed. And that same type of abuse was then put onto me from my dad with a belt and being hit. And so at a very early age, I created a misbelief and a misinterpretation of reality that if I express myself, I'm going to be abused. I'm going to be hit. It's not safe. it's not safe. Being in this body and expressing and being me is not safe. So I started to modify my way of being. And then as I started to play around with my sensual energy, my first experience was with a boy and a girl next door, both the boy and the girl. And I wasn't punished for playing or exploring with the boy, but I was punished for exploring with a woman, with my neighbor next door, who was just pure and innocent, just exploring, right? Because our sexual energy is really pure and innocent.
Right.
And I was punished for that exploration, grounded for a month. And so what that started to do is it started to build something in my own psyche at such a young age of, I'm dirty, this is sinful, this is shameful, this is wrong, it's dangerous. My sexual energy is dangerous. Me being me is dangerous. And immediately there was a sense of separateness from a very early age. I'm talking like 6 years old, 7 years old, like at that time. And my parents went through a really turmoil divorce. It made LA Times, actually, which is really funny, as the worst divorce, messiest divorce in history.
Wow.
And it was a really big, explosion of anger and unconscious behavior. And it was very much a victim and tyrant cycle that was publicized. And what happened was we ended up losing our house. My parents got divorced, and I ended up having to leave my home and live in a homeless shelter in Santa Monica.
Gosh.
And going from a home of having, 3 maids and 2 Rolls Royce and having lots of wealth and abundance and riches and everything, to now being completely stripped away, to living, in a kitchen on a cot in a shelter with people that I don't know, but with my family, with my 3 sisters, 4 sisters, and my mom, was devastating. It was shocking. Talk about contrast, absolute contrast. And in that place of confusion and scared and being really fearful, we got out of the homeless shelter and we ended up getting into an apartment. And I had just entered the 6th grade. My mom was having this boyfriend who got her addicted to drugs. He was someone who was supposed to help and was guided from another person to help my mom get on her feet. But instead, he was very malicious and had an addiction. And he, in a sense, tricked my mother because she was so naive, being married at 17 years old, leaving her country, not knowing anything. She didn't know what any of this stuff was. And her seeking healing from her divorce, like we would do, we're so blessed today to have so many trusted resources of healing and community. But back then, in the early 90s, there wasn't. And so she got addicted to drugs, and this man began to live in our house. And 2 things that happened were a catalyst to shaping me beyond the divorce piece. Was one, I was on my way home in the 6th grade. I had just started school. And I was like 2 weeks into school. And I was walking home, and I had on these little shorts, and I had on just a tank top, middle of the day, 2:00, walking home in the middle of the street. And as I was going home in a residential area, started walking, and I kind of like felt this wave of energy as this man started coming down the stairs. And I'm like, oh, I'm not thinking anything. I'm just, walking on my way home. Didn't have a cell phone at the time because you're so young,
Right.
and it's still in the 90s. So I'm like walking on my way home, and this guy comes in front of me and kind of like positions himself to block my pathway. And then he suddenly turns around and starts like walking in front of me. And I was like, okay, maybe he's confused on where he's going. And as I start walking with him, like a few hundred feet, there's a stairway to a garage, an underground garage. And right as we're entering the stairway, he turns around, Aaron, and he grabs my arm and he says, "You're coming with me." And in that moment, this man tried to abduct me, children kidnapping, abduction in the middle of the day in Los Angeles. And in that moment, it was complete fight or flight mentality. I have goosebumps thinking about it. In that split second, I just looked up, and thank God these 2 women were jogging and walking our way. And he saw me look, and he looked. And in that moment, I just acted. I kicked him, I pushed him, and I ran for my entire life, crying, sobbing, asking people to help me. No one stopped. And I remember running for blocks and blocks and blocks, getting to a Kentucky Fried Chicken at the corner, walking in and just saying help and then completely collapsing on the ground. I don't remember anything besides waking up to the police and to the employees that were there trying to revive me. And then I gave a whole police report. And even in then, me running away, it wasn't like, oh, I'm running away and I'm free. I started kicking him and running away. I looked back. The man pulled out a gun and he aimed it at me.
Oh my God.
And that's when I started running and swerving. So by the time I got to this Kentucky Fried Chicken, I had exuded full primal energy. Like we would race through the jungle if a lion or tiger was chasing us. That was that much adrenaline, and cortisol running through my entire system. And so that experience was very traumatic for me. It was, I'm not safe. I'm not safe anywhere in the middle of the daylight. Within that same month of that experience, my mom didn't believe me. She thought I was crying wolf.
Oh.
And she, shamed me for wearing short shorts at the time. Of like, you shouldn't be wearing those shorts and you shouldn't be walking down that street. So I didn't even get support from my own mother at the time, which was devastating. And it started to eat me away and the shame started building. And within that same month, the next life-changing traumatic experience happened in my mom's home, in our family home, when my mom left in the morning to go to work. And I went in to check on her and say, good morning, I love you. I'd gone to the bathroom. And she said goodbye and she left. And I was going back to my bedroom, and her boyfriend at the time, the drug addict, who I didn't know was on drugs at the time, so young. I was like 12. So I don't know what's happening. I just know that there's, people are being weird. And I remember he called me into the room and I was like, okay, what's going on? And I came in and he like grabbed me and hugged me, spun me around. So he was behind me, hugging me. And he just started hugging me and holding me. And I never would have thought the next thing would happen. It was not at all in my awareness. I didn't know anything about sexual abuse, like nothing. This was never in my life. I'd never seen it, known about it. What he proceeded to do was molest me. He aggressively and violently molested me. He put his hands down into my underwear. He started to touch me. He started to finger me. And I remember saying, this is hurting and ouch. Like, I don't like this. This hurts. Like, please stop. And he wouldn't stop. And at the end of it, once I was trying to finally wiggle away, it was like that moment, my soul just left my body. Like I just disassociated because the pain was strong. I was controlled in, I couldn't leave. And so I just coped with whatever I could, which was leaving the body and leaving the pain. And when the experience was over, I was so disheveled. I didn't know what was happening. And I like walked out feeling so disgusting and so just low. And on top of that, he's like, you can't tell your mom or I'm going to kill you. And he took $5 out and he threw the $5 at me across the room and said, you better not tell anyone. And I remember, I think I even picked up the $5 just so there wasn't evidence. And like being so young in that moment, I immediately created a belief around my worthiness as a woman in this physical body, as a girl. I'll say at that time it was a girl, that I'm not valuable or I'm only as worthy. My body is worth $5. Like that was such a hard thing for a girl at 12 years old to even try to understand, let alone process or sit with. And from that moment on, I started to shift and reject my femininity because it's dangerous to be in a woman's body. It's dangerous to be a girl. So I better start acting like a dude and start protecting myself and start to like become more aggressive and be more of a fighter. And, if I'm shining and being a light, I'm now attracting danger. So my light attracts danger. My being alone, my femininity is dangerous. And so I couldn't have that. There was no way I could have that. So I started to embrace more of my masculine side and stepped more and more into my masculine side. And in that time, within the next day, I communicated with my mom. And again, she didn't believe me. She kept him in the house, and just shows her level of codependency and her lack of consciousness, being on substances and And I understand, I have so much compassion for what journey she was on, but it really set me in a trajectory. And at that point, you know, he then threatened to throw my little sister off a balcony. We got into literally like a knife fight. Like I had to have a knife on him. We set up booby traps in the house because I would never let him come to my sisters or prevent this from happening again to anybody. And I just started to man up in that way at such a young age. And then it was reported. My dad had caught wind. He was in the Middle East and reported it to child services. And then my mom surrendered us to the government. And so for a year and a half, I was in the foster care system, and I lived in Compton and Inglewood and in the ghettos and in Lancaster, was with my sisters, separated from my sisters, didn't see my mom. And it was a very trying time that really pushed me into being independent very young and being very aggressive, being very angry at the situation, of not having a voice, not being heard, not being nurtured in any way. And I held on to that for a majority of my entire life. And not now, but for a majority of my life until I had an awakening. And with this disconnection to my body, disconnection to myself, and armoring up to be in my masculine power and fucking be this badass, it disconnected me. And it wasn't until I fell in love in high school and I got into my first long-term relationship with my boyfriend that I was with for 6 years that we started to be sexual together. And I started having shame about not being able to orgasm, not being able to have an orgasm or know my body, and being in my head and thought something was wrong with me or something was off. And so I tried to masturbate on my own in college. It was a silly idea, but it was like, I think it was like an American Pie or something, where someone had like put their dick in a vacuum cleaner to like act like, you know, the person was giving them head. And I was like, well, number one, I don't have really any sexual education. There's no education on pleasure for women. Pleasure is shamed upon. So I didn't have any resources to even know how to start to pleasure myself or what pleasure was about. So I just copied what I saw something on television, complete lack of education. And so I ended up harming myself and harming my labia. And then that just fed into me creating something where I was now thinking that I was deformed based on this masturbation process. At 19, I didn't go to the doctor. I didn't tell my boyfriend. I hid it for months. I was swollen. I was shamed. And in that moment, I created a belief that I am just so broken that this is not possible for me. I was so shameful. And I never dealt with it. I never dealt with it until I had to deal with it. Until my body was like, girl, you better wake up. And when I was 26 years old, I was in an abusive relationship, a physically abusive relationship, and an emotional abusive relationship, because that's what I thought I deserved. And that's what I settled on. We would smoke weed. We would overeat all the time. We were numbing out. We were not experiencing deep levels of intimacy in any way. And it was this wake-up call for me when I was diagnosed with HPV and severe high-grade CIN cervical dysplasia 2 and 3, which had cancerous mutated cells. And it was through my genitals, through my womb, that got me to stop and wake up and reconnect to the fact that I'm a woman and I have feminine organs and I've got a yoni, you know, and a vagina that is saying, hey, there's a whole other realm going on inside of you that you've been disconnected to. And there's a lot of things that you haven't processed that are now manifesting into disease because of the dis-ease of self. And so that was a big awakening for me. That was my biggest spiritual awakening, because I chose to go an alternative route. I did not go in and cut out my cervix like they wanted me to. And the male doctor said, this is all your choice. A male doctor told me what I had to do with my body. This is what you need to do. This is the only thing you can do. Good luck. And if you try something else, you're going to come back to me. And it was completely shaming again and trying to tell me that they know what's best for my body and laughing at my idea. And so I went on a mission and a crusade with my sister, and we found a whole other resources of a woman named Dr. Gerber. She's a naturopathic doctor, and she created a treatment or process of treatment called Escharotics, which is an all natural, holistic way, a whole perspective of treating me to where I would put on a topical treatment. It would just work with the affected cancerous cells. And then from that point, I would go into taking protocols and herbs and tinctures and tonics. And it was a completely holistic approach because I didn't want to have a percentage of miscarriage at 26 years old. My future was on the line of being a mom. And at that time, I didn't even think about being a mom. But when that moment of your reproduction is on the line and the Western medicine is saying, we got to cut out parts of your cervix. So now you're going to have percentage of 30% of a miscarriage. We're not going to get to the root of the problem. So we're just going to cut out what we want to cut out. And then it may develop because it's so high grade, you're going to have to do it again. And then now you're at 60%. So, you know, if you want kids, just know that that's now your reality. And it was like, no, I believed so powerfully in a different reality that I paved and carved a new way, an alternative way that was so against the mainstream that worked. I healed myself from HPV. I healed myself from the pre-cervical cancer naturally, organically, and it brought me into mindfulness and meditation and changing my diet and changing my relationship with food through elimination, through seeing how my body responds to it, because the inner environment of what I was putting in was so vital as medicine in order to optimize my immunity to allow my system to heal properly. So it radically transformed my relationship with food. I cut out alcohol, I cut out dairy, I cut out red meat. I still don't include those things into my diet for the most part. I had to rework everything and learn to cook and become so mindful with absolutely everything. And really importantly is it woke me up. It woke me. I became awoken, right, to my sexual energy and my power. And because I couldn't have sex at the time, and I was feeling all these emotions and the shame that was coming up that I never processed from the traumatic experiences that manifested this disease dissonance in my body, I chose to deal with this inner disease firsthand. And I reframed my perspective on my body, my sexuality, my femininity through the framework of Tantra and sacred sexuality. That was such a healing gift, that modality and that ancient wisdom, to shine light and bring me into a new awareness that was out of the box of the Western society and cultural way of viewing sex and our sexuality and our bodies as women.
That was probably the most powerful 12, 15 minutes of a story on this entire summit, honestly. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is a journey. You want to talk about a journey? Like this is a journey for sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Incredible. Yeah, it really was a big journey. And I couldn't have done it without my sisters around me, right? The support in my sisterhood, to my actual blood sisters, you know, to help me and to have these conversations, and my faith, you know, my radical faith in that knowing of like, no, I this is not going to happen. And in those moments of regret or fear, you know, there was not moments when I didn't wake up and I wasn't afraid for my life. Is this going to work? Or question the journey, right? But it was coming back to that belief, right? Because our beliefs create our reality. And so having that steadfast belief and keep coming back to repaving this way and this new belief is why I believe it worked.
Where did that come from? Because usually someone who's gone through that much trauma, you have no belief in anything. What gave you the strength to be like, no, I'm not doing it like this?
Oof, that's a great question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that question, actually. Well, I've always been connected to the universe and faith from a little girl. And I've always prayed heavily. And I never knew if it really worked or not. But if there was going to be a time to be filled up with strength, this was going to be the time. And where I drew my biggest strength from was thinking about my future children. Like the fact that you're going to tell me that I can't potentially have children and this is not my choice, put me in a position of empowerment of, oh no, like I'm not going to accept that this is reality. Like I'm going to have children. I want to have children. And the fact that you're telling me that this is the only way that has to be, it's not a possibility. I didn't realize I would be going inward. I didn't realize this was going to bring me to meditation and a conscious awakening and change my entire life. But my soul on some level knew. And that knowingness inside is where I drew my strength from. That deep intuitive knowing that, okay, there's gotta be something else. Like this is like this, so this can't be the only solution. But that strength of, I'm not gonna just go in and cut out my body. I think it's really inner faith, like really having that faith, but also that connection to my inner strength. And I think that having to exude physical strength of life and death, again, manifested in the same type of life and death, fight or flight, of like, I'm gonna fucking fight. And that has always been something inside of me. This very strong warrior always has been inside of me.
I love that you listened. That's the thing. I think our bodies are telling us something, right? And I think to honor that and to get quiet enough to listen, the answers are in here, right? The
Yes.
power is in here. We don't have to look to anything exterior. We can listen and observe, but the power is all right here, which is, woo, just got chills again. Now let's talk about a couple of things here, because I think when it comes to trauma, no matter who you are, if there is trauma, it can disconnect you from yourself, no matter if it's 5 minutes or 5 years.
And you may not even know that it's trauma.
Exactly.
You may not even be aware that the experience created trauma.
But what do you think is actually happening in the body? Like you said, there's anger, there's fear, there's safety. Go ahead.
There's a disconnection, but also, what's going on in the body is we have all of these receptors, these sensitive receptors through our nervous system, and going through the 72,000 nadis, the pressure points, the acupuncture points through the body. And when we go through trauma, what happens, instead of the receptors being out and open to receive life and to be open to life, we're actually retracting. So the receptors pull back in, which then creates that experience of separation, because now we're not connected to all things and open, we're actually pulled back in and we're disconnected. And then there's also the disconnection spiritually. So the disconnection spiritually is, when we can go through trauma, there's a part of our spirit that will leave the body to cope with the physical experience. So if we are, and my belief is that we are all souls having a human experience, that there's an essence inside of the body. And so a part of the soul or our essence disassociates. So now we have an energetic body or the spiritual body, and then we have the physical body. So there's a disassociation from the physical matter body in order to try to protect the emotional and spiritual body. And until we do the work to bridge them and reintegrate them back together, we're not going to be able to feel truly whole or connected. And we will try to do that through food, through sex, through things that we numb with, that try to get us to feel, but it's only creating more trauma and more disconnection.
So beautifully said. You're just, I bet everyone listening is like, right now. Get that head nod, because I'm doing that too. So,
get that nod.
Yep. And it also disconnects us from our feminine power. So talk to us about what is our divine feminine power.
When I talk about the divine feminine power, I talk about the fact that, number one, we've chosen to reincarnate into a feminine form of body. So I'm talking about the feminine essence. The divine feminine essence is the higher self, capital S self, not the basic ego self, lowercase self, where we're like, I'm a woman and I have breasts and I have hair. It's like, it's an essence. There are qualities that are intrinsic to the divine feminine. And those qualities live inside of us as every woman or anyone that's connected to the feminine in that aspect. And so when we introduce the divine feminine, it is our goddess self, the expression of self that is the divine, that is the sacred, that is the holy, that is the honor, that is the reverence, the pure, the all-encompassing beauty of creation. So when we think about the divine feminine, an introduction is think about creation energy. Think about Mother Earth, that is considered a Mother Earth, not Father Earth, but Mother Earth, feminine. And on the earth, it is always creating, birthing beauty. There's always motion. There's always forward movement. There's harmony, cooperation. There's There's flow, fluidity, blossoming. There's intuition. There's connectivity. All of these are qualities that we embody when we connect to our divine feminine power that lives inside of us and in our womb. And when we look at the womb is a microcosm for the macrocosm of the universe or the earth's creation. So the same things that are happening on a greater scale in the universe of things exploding, things being birthed and being death at the same time, we as women, as the feminine, hold that universe in our womb. The fact that we are literally creators of life. Mm-hmm. We birth life. We spark life. That is power of the feminine that the masculine and men do not have. Mm-hmm. And it's not a comparison or a judgment. It is a sheer fact. And when we awaken to how powerful we are, how much power lives in our womb, in our sacral chakra, our belly, the energy that we hold of such divinity that has created this entire world that we live in, it changes the way we feel and think about ourselves and hold ourselves. That is power, to know we can create just as big as the universe can create the mountains. We can create anything in our life with that same energy, and we're a channel for that. And we can embody that power. Like, that is feminine power. That is Shakti power. And we connect ourselves with that power to the earth, to all the other energies that exist on the planet and in the universal cosmos. And what a gift it is to awaken and understand and get to know that side of ourselves and get to own that energy within ourselves and use that sexual, powerful, creative, life force, feminine energy to birth our desires, to birth our dreams, to birth our ideal relationships, but to give birth to our most authentic self.
You're just amazing. I don't think any generation grew up with that power instilled in our cells, in our body. It was like, yeah, you grow up, you're a female, you have this body part, you make a baby, and you have a baby, and here's how you have a baby. And we didn't, or at least I didn't grow up with the understanding of you hold the power of the universe inside of you, literally, and you create life. That was never even on the conversation. It was, you don't even talk about sex until you're whatever age, right? It's like, it's been this like suppression almost, not on purpose. It was just our parents' generation. They were only doing the best that they could. That's all they knew. And in fact, in the 50s, of course, we know a lot of that was suppressed, which is another conversation. To know that power, that is incredible. And it completely affects the way that we show up in the world. I agree 100%, because if you are walking around like, I am the creator of life, of this incredible divine intelligence, you will show up in the world differently. What have you seen, how it affects the way women show up in the world?
Day and night, day and night. And just a kind of a little sidebar to what you said. Mm-hmm. We weren't educated on this in the Western world, but you better believe that in the Eastern part of the world, there is education. There's deities around. It's in the sacred text. It's held as sacred and holy. And there are statues of divine women, of goddesses, even with their yoni, their vagina showing. And there's actual temples that are all dedicated to the feminine genitalia, to honor that place and portal of life. And we have fallen away from that power that and I'm not going to get on a whole tangent, but in the patriarchal society of the West, and that disconnection of the feminine power to keep us in a suppression, which is why there hasn't been the education. So we could stay in a smaller, submissive box and not know how powerful we are, due to the unconscious masculine and patriarchal society, afraid of the feminine power because they don't know how to navigate it because they're not educated. So I just felt like that was important to bring that piece in. And that's, again, why I love Tantra and sacred sexuality, because it really showed me an ancient, from the beginning of time, from the East, a different framework around our sexuality, our body, and our power as a women.
And
So
that's beautiful. We need, I think our culture needs exposure to that so badly.
yeah. And so to your question, it's resulted in many women being disconnected from that knowing, from that intrinsic divine intelligence, to where we're creating ourselves to be an ideal lady boss, but in a man's world, with what we're seeing around us, with how these women are successful, well, they've got their pants on, right? Their business pants on. You even see women wearing all the suits, dressing like men, trying to be like a man. And I see that what's happened in the 70s was there was such a big swing from the 50s of women being like these really, housewives, and being, at home and taking care of things, and these traditional gender roles, to where we went the opposite, and women were like, fuck this, I want to be in the workplace. And we're still battling that, but it was like, I want to be in the workplace, I'm equal to men. We're not equal to men. I'm sorry, there's no equality. We're different. We're never going to be equal.
Oh,
we're never going to be equal.
Yes.
Men can't birth life. Let's be real. There's no equality here. So they went the opposite side, and it was like, let's be equal as men. So let's dress like them. Let's act like them. Let's play to the table with them. Let's match them. And so from this buildup from the 70s to now, which I believe we're finally waking up and swinging back to the middle, is we've actually shamed as women our own femininity.
Yes.
We've rejected our own femininity. And we've shown up to the table leading with our masculine, myself included, before I was in this industry, working in interior design and working with branding and marketing and production, leading with my masculine, showing up to the table, hustling, grinding, working the hours, getting the acclimates, pushing, doing all of this very masculine, assertive energy, going for it, heavy hitting, really hard, which it's beautiful. We can have a balance to that. Mm-hmm. As women. We need our inner masculine in service, however, not to lead from our masculine as we are men, because we are women. And the women that I know that do the work around accessing their feminine power, they show up as a huge game changer to the table. I've got women that I work with who are attorneys and high-powered CEOs, where they walk into a room and they're just radiating love. Everyone's paying attention to them. They don't have to try to force someone to get them to listen to their opinion. There's more of an allure. There's more of an invitation. People are like, who is that? I want to get to know that person. What do they have to say? I'm curious, because they're emanating and they're radiating their femininity, which is attractive, which is opening, which is enticing. They're not afraid to use their voice and their power, because they know what they bring to the table, because they're connected to that power. They're softer with the words that they use. So they're still direct, but the energy of which the words ride upon are more feminine and soft in nature, just as powerful, but not forceful. And the difference too is relationship. The relationships that they have in their feminine, they have so many girlfriends. They're not in the jealousy and the competition anymore, because we all can celebrate each other's lights and gifts. So there's a sisterhood and a bond. And they're actually attracting more healthy masculine men, because they're not leading with their masculine. Where women who lead with their masculine attract either very masculine men and it becomes combative, right? You can have a very combative environment at work, or you attract very feminine men, where you're like, I really want a man. He's really beautiful, but I don't feel him. Well, because we're in our masculine. So we're gotta attract our reciprocal, which would then be a feminine man for us. And so when women are disconnected and unconscious, then we're seeking connection to try to connect to that feminine intrinsic part of ourselves through outside sources.
And again, so many women are probably like, yeah.
I hope so. I hope you're just like, yes. Let this resonate in your cells as you watch this.
Because I am naturally, being in sports my whole life, right? I naturally just wired, like, I want to change the world. I want to help people. I want to, I have this big vision for my life. And it's almost like that go, right? So you get caught up when you watch the Gary V, hustle mentality, which I love. He's so inspiring, but he is very masculine. But I'm like, yeah, all right. get up, crush the day, you know, and
there's a time and
exactly.
place of that. It's like that masculine in service to your feminine. So we are both, right? It's getting balanced to be 100% in both our masculine and feminine, and becoming fluid, and being
Right.
able to know when I can channel my inner masculine, when I can channel that inner warrior part of me that's like going to get it and hustling. But even when you're doing that, how much pleasure are you having in that process? Or are you trying to like grit down to the bone and gritting your teeth through the
Right.
process? Or is it a pleasurable, enjoyable process? You can still hustle, but have fun with the hustle and play
Right.
with the hustle.
That's the difference right there. That is the difference. So,
That's a game changer. It's a
yeah,
game changer.
I've been in the health space in sales and business development. So you're out in the field, you're meeting with people, but I loved it. Like I became alive when I was near the people that I loved and my practitioners and the doctors I was working with, and I was helping people and I was hugging people. But I did get too over the top where I was working every weekend nonstop, no rest, just go, 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 wake up at 5 a.m., go to the gym, work 12 hours, go, run again and then come back, work. It was off balance. And that becomes a lack of self-care. And that's what I want to talk about next is when we get too in the masculine, we become disconnected to self-care. So what does that look like?
We don't prioritize pleasure. We don't prioritize rest. We don't prioritize our creativity or our relaxation. And so we over prioritize more masculine, celebrated qualities or ways of being, like you just mentioned. In a world that doesn't celebrate more feminine ways of being, it's hard to see the value in self-care when the world doesn't celebrate self-care. It celebrates you for being at the office all hours of the night. Here's some more money. Here's this. Keep hustling.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why self-care is so crucial and important for our health and our wellness, to fuel us so we can be able to do the things. I love to use this analogy of a car. The simplest way to break down self-care. Think about a car. You are the car. You are the vessel. And if you are driving this car and you're go, 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 it's great. You're going to get to where you want to get, and you're going to get there really fast. But over time, if you don't stop to take care of the car, if you don't get new tires, if you don't go get that oil change, if you don't go put gas in the car, fuel, right? Food, fuel, gasoline, then what's going to happen to that car, to this vessel? It's going to get crickety, ronkety. It's going to get dirty. It may blow up from being too hot. All these manifestations. And the same thing happens to us within our body. If we are not prioritizing and creating the space to take care of ourselves, to reconnect to ourselves sensually, spiritually, our creativity, which is going to fuel us even more to take on the tasks of what we decide to do in the world, then we're not going to get there. And if we do get there, we're going to get there with the wheels falling off to where we can't even enjoy or celebrate it because we're so damn exhausted. And I can't tell you how many women I've coached that are like, too tired for pleasure. I'm too tired because I work all the time. It's so important to prioritize that work, play, pleasure balance and see it as a necessity, not a luxury, a necessity to your overall wellness and health. And if we are not prioritizing connecting to that aspect, our sexual energy is a huge, huge untapped resource that could catapult us and fuel us beyond our belief of what we could even imagine. Because remember, it's the same energy that's creating these massive universes. So if we can put a priority to tap into that, to slow down, to develop pleasure practices, to be mindful and intentional with what we're eating and how we're feeling, to prioritize meditation. Like I have a self-care practice. It's the backbone and foundation of my life, and my business excels because of my practice. It enhances my life. It enhances my relationships. It's actually, everything starts to kind of get wonky and fall apart, or I question or doubt my decisions or what I'm doing when I'm not connected to myself.
Versus, so when you think, oh, I'm hustling, I'm going to work an extra 20 hours this weekend so I can get on top of it. it will actually come back and just completely block you because you are disconnected and you cannot attract when you're in that state, right?
And you can't receive when you're in
Can't
that stage.
receive.
Everything's
Yeah.
blocked. You know, everything is an energetic exchange. And when I'm bringing this into, for those who are familiar with the chakra system, if you're not familiar and you're just hearing this for the first time, the chakra system are energy centers that we hold within our body. It's a place where we give and receive. We're exchanging energy with the outside world, and it's something that we hold. And in giving and receiving with creativity, money, sex, relationship, power, that's all held in our second chakra with our belly, which is correlated to anything that's deficiency with food, repression of sexuality, lack of self-care, lack of feeling worthy. So all of this comes into play, where if you're hustling, you're blocking and actually closing that energy center wheel versus staying open to where life can meet you and you can give out the energy to attract and also receive. And you wonder, why are things staying the same way? Well, because if you're not changing, no change can happen. And just hustling and being on the grind, you're just now putting yourself in a loop and a circle versus being in receptivity mode. And receptivity mode is actually a feminine quality.
Girl, you were just giving it to us so good. It's so good. So then this is where the emotional eating issue comes into play, right? Because we're hustling and we're disconnected from ourselves, and all of a sudden we're reaching for stuff. So what's happening when we're in this state? What's happening to us and we're disconnecting, we're reaching for the food?
Due to trauma, any trauma that we've had, like you said, 5 minutes, 5 seconds, whether it's aware or not. And trauma could be anything. Someone saying something hurtful that creates a traumatic experience. So any trauma that we're holding as women, especially around our self-image and the way we're supposed to be in this world, that is creating a deficiency in our chakra, in our sacral chakra system. And because there's a deficiency, we are now out of balance. And our go-to mechanism is try to bring ourselves back into balance by reaching for things that we feel comfortable with like food. So food becomes a coping mechanism, because what happens when we reach for food? Well, we're activating our senses. We're starting to use our motor function. So we're getting back into the body by eating, by smelling, by tasting, even if it's just for a few seconds, right? You may numb afterwards, but for those few seconds of pleasure, you're like, ooh, this tastes good. Ooh, this smells good. Okay, I want to just consume to feel something. I want to feel something.
Feel something.
So we're reaching for the food to feel and to try to fill a hole or a void, because we're actually in a deficiency and we're giving too much energy outside. So internally, the energy we're receiving is deficient. So food becomes our idea of medicine, but actually anything misused, abused, or in excess becomes detrimental to our health.
So how do we get back to where we are not reaching for the food? How do we reconnect? How do we get back to this?
Great question. So the first thing, awareness. Everyone's like, what do I do? Give me the 3 steps.
Right.
Step 1, be aware of your actions. Be aware when you're not feeling connected. Be aware if you're reaching for food because you're bored or you're lonely. That right there, just shining the light of awareness, and then becoming to track when you're reaching for your food. Just taking mental note. Okay, wow, I'm reaching for it right now. I'm not feeling connected. And then sit with the feeling. Be aware and then sit with the feeling. Wow, okay, I'm wanting to feel connected. I'm not feeling connected right now. Don't shame yourself, because that's going to fuel you feeling disconnected. So having compassion, awareness, sitting with that awareness, having compassion and self-love of, okay, wow, I'm so grateful that I'm seeing that I'm reaching for food right now. I'm bringing in compassion for this part of me that feels disconnected, that wants to connect. Okay, great. What can I do then to get back into my body? Like your question, that's not reaching for food. Move your body. To get back in your body is medicine. Food in this context is not medicine for you right now because we haven't reworked the relationship with food.
Mm-hmm.
But you can rework your relationship with feeling and senses in your body. So things to get back into your body is using your senses. Light a candle, light incense, put on some music, start to shake your body, jump up and down, do some somatic work. I love doing Kundalini shakes because you just start jumping and it's a somatic way of awakening the nervous system and getting back into your body. And then wisdom will come forward, right? That inner knowing, what do I need right now in this moment? Because when we're disconnected and we're numb, we can't listen to the body.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're shaking or we're dancing for even one song, right? Or we're taking deep breaths to come back into the body. You could take 8 deep breaths into the body, take 8 deep breaths back down out of the body. Do that for several minutes. And you'll start to become aware in your body. And then you'll notice, am I actually really hungry? You may even forgotten that you're reaching for food because you're now shifting your awareness and you're creating a mind-body connection and continuum that was not there previous.
Beautiful.
So those are just some very simple ways to do it. But the first step is awareness, because if we're not aware we're doing it, then how can we course correct ourselves?
And also too, to think about, do we ever want to sit in our pain? Everything is Amazon Prime. Everything is like quick to the door, Uber Eats. Don't want to wait in line at Starbucks. You can call in your order. No one wants to sit and wait and just feel anymore, right? Like,
yeah, that's a very good point. And also with food, which is fascinating that I find is we can also use food as a way of self-sabotaging.
mm-hmm.
And self-sabotaging how good we're feeling. If you're watching this, how many times were you feeling really fucking great?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, I'm vibing high, I'm feeling really good. And then you're like, damn, I'm gonna eat this like fried chicken piece, or I'm gonna eat all this sugar right now. And suddenly you hit an upper limiting belief of how good you could feel. And you stop it because you're afraid once you start to feel good, this can't last for long. So we unconsciously self-sabotage how good we can stand it, how much pleasure and joy and power and connection we can feel because we're scared it's going to go away on some level. So we'll reach for the food, and oftentimes you'll eat something and suddenly you're like, fuck, I don't feel so good anymore. Oh, I ate that, and like, damn, that was too much. And now suddenly you're back into that same cycle of hating food, hating your body, not like being in the body, and you're back to your comfort zone. That's your primary resting state of feeling like shit or not feeling good, and then judging yourself, and then the shame cycle continues.
Shame is the lowest vibration, and that will completely block, right? Your chakras completely block you off. And then you get stuck, right? And if you think about it, when you're dancing, do you ever, when you're dancing, you're like, yep, I feel like a fried chicken, some like shit food. You never think about that. When you're dancing, you're like, I am in the moment. I'm loving life. Life is good.
I'm in my joy.
I'm in my power. You are fully you in that moment. Connected.
You are connected in that moment. You are fully you because you're connected in that moment. You're like, yes, yes.
We all know that feeling. And so that is such a good reminder that if we can even think about that the next time we go to grab for the food, to be like, hold on a minute,
get back to your senses, get back into your senses. You have sight, you have smell, you have touch, you have feeling, just get that sunshine on your skin, take those deep breaths, get back into the body, make that the priority over reaching for the food. And if you're still hungry afterwards, you'll be more mindful when you do show up to have that food and to eat that. It will become more of fuel.
Like you said, our senses are everything. So how do we become more sensual with our experience with our food?
2 words: slow down. Slow down, because you're hustling, you're go, 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 go. Slow down. Really be present with your food. Be present with the senses. Right? Sensuality is not a race. It's a slow, sensual flow. So you hold that. Let's say you're going to eat berries. You hold the berries in your hand. Feel the texture of the berries. Wow. Just for a moment, look at how it's designed. Look at the shaping of it. Smell it before you put it in your mouth. It's going to taste better because you're smelling it. So it's like activating all those
All the
receptors.
things. Yep.
So then you eat it and you slow down. And as you're eating it, you take a moment to appreciate and enjoy, because food is also energy. It has the energy of the sun. It's grown outdoors. It has the energy of the earth. So it carries a vibration. We can tune into that vibration and allow that consciousness and that vibration to fuel us. And when we slow down, we don't need to eat as much because we're full faster, because we're more connected to it. So it's slowing it down. It's making pleasure a priority. It's taking breaks as you're hustling and you're working. I do something where if I'm doing like a full work day, at the 50-minute mark, and this is actually something that all top performers do, is they all get it. Brandon Bashout talks about this. Every 50 minutes, he gets up and he shakes and he moves his body and like does some breath work. I put on music and I do a dance, and then I take a breath. Then I'll come back in and I do it in 50-minute increments and allow myself to move in the moment between. So I'm not just sitting and hustling. I'm balancing my mind-body connection, feeling good in my body, keeping my vibration high, being aware, and then I'm bringing that back into the work that I'm doing. And it's really making pleasure a priority. I don't know how many times I say that, but it's so true. In a world that doesn't prioritize pleasure and slowing down, you've got to pave the own way and your own path to say, I believe this is going to enhance my life and I'm going to feel better. And if I feel better, then everything I do and where I act from is going to come from a new place that is connected to me feeling good. And I can't lose when I'm coming from that place.
And the worthiness too of it, right? Like we are worthy. We don't have to go out and earn it. We are worthy now, which is the divine power, right? That is the divine power.
Yeah, as is. We can't earn our worth. There's no amount of money in the world, no relationship, no accolades, no awards that is increasing your value. It may increase your ego's idea and self-image of a valuable or more respected or accepted person, but we are intrinsically worthy and value. And the quickest way to remember that, think about a baby. We're going to question how much we love you. We're going to question your worthiness. This little baby is smiling and we are in love with this baby. We're not giving it conditions on how we view it or how much it's worth. We are the same thing. We are that baby. Now we've developed these perception filters and this false self-image created from our wound and our trauma and the ego that we're trying to hold as this fake icon based on all of these things outside of ourselves. But really, self-love is knowing that there's a higher divine self in me, and I'm choosing to love that part of myself unconditionally. And I know that that part is love. I am worthy as is. I love and accept myself as is because I am a divine soul and source. That is not changeable. There's nothing we could do or say that could lower our value. It is in our cells. It is wired into our DNA. Nothing could wipe it clean except for our own belief that we're not worthy could block us from the experience and the majesty of our own worthiness.
I know every female is like, hell yes right now. And I think that's one thing to remember is we have to see ourselves. I don't know if anyone out there has a nephew or a daughter or someone that they love more than anything in the world. We have to see ourselves as them, and how we love them is how we need to love ourselves. So when I think of my nephews, I unconditional love. I just think about them and it's just this big ball of light and happiness and joy and love, just no matter what they can do. And that's what you're talking about, is you need to see yourself in that way.
Yeah, a great way to think about it too is you're worthy because you're born.
Mm,
Because you're here, like you're chosen. You're worthy to be in a human body. Your soul has chosen to reincarnate. You're alive. That's it.
that's it. We don't have to earn it. Mm-hmm.
We don't have to earn it. You can't actually earn it.
That's huge. That's huge. So is that one of our problems as women, is we feel like we have to earn it, and we're out in the world trying to grab it, and that's what's blocking us from ourselves. That's what's blocking us from our feminine power. So we, in essence, we need to see ourselves and see our power to reclaim it.
Yeah, we need to be willing to open up to our own power. We need to be willing to not reject or negate or shame our own feminine essence and change our perspective of seeing us as powerful versus weak. There's a lot of victimization and shaming consciousness around the feminine. Even, and I'm going to say it as like, don't be a pussy.
Mm-hmm.
Like that alone is like a terminology and slang used across the board, which is shaming the feminine and shaming the masculine, and also is applying a sense of disempowerment and weak, being weak. So for women, even hearing that terminology, it's that same idea of like there's a collective epidemic of viewing the feminine as weak. And so if we can start to reframe that and be open to a new dialogue, a new narrative around our power, and we can open to accepting that power, then we can be more connected to that part of ourselves and really harness our energy for good, for fuel.
And what are some things you did to connect to that? What are some things you did to heal?
I made a lot of time for myself. I made a lot of time to connect to my body, to explore my body, to make that a priority. I did a lot of compassionate self-forgiveness. I did a lot of forgiveness for myself, for all the ways that I saw myself as ugly, as broken, as dirty, as being too dark-skinned, as not beautiful, judging myself for not being blonde hair and blue-eyed. I know it sounds crazy, but these are all beliefs that I would hold against myself. And when we're willing to look in the mirror and see what we're projecting on ourselves on a daily basis and rework the dialogue that we're having with ourselves, is when we can start to change the relationship with the woman in the mirror, and we can start to see ourselves or see her differently, as beautiful, accept ourselves, love ourselves for the messiness. We are messy, we are beautiful, we are imperfect, we are created to be that way. And if we can start to look for where love is versus look for where love is lacking, look for where we're beautiful versus looking where we're broken, shifting our lens is a huge piece. So I did a lot of mirror work as well. Years of mirror work. I still do mirror work. It's my number one power tool. Every time you look in the mirror, what am I thinking? I have a client that looks in the mirror at least 30, 40 times a day. And when you glance in the mirror, are you thinking, oh, I love you? Or are you thinking, oh God, you look hideous. Oh, your hair looks ugly. Oh God, I'm getting bags. Oh, I shouldn't do that. Oh, I'm looking fat. All of that is shaming and projecting a rejection of your feminine form and expression. And if you can reframe that when you look in the mirror just a little bit and start to connect to the soul in your eyes, the eye connection, the most intimate connection, looking in that left eye and saying, I love you. I accept you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh my God. I'm so sorry for how I've treated you, my body, myself, my ego. Really working with that compassion and that forgiveness of how I treated myself. Forget everybody on the outside. They're just showing up as mirrors for how I'm really showing up in the mirror with myself. And we'll get in a pattern of seeking relationships or jobs or other people to try to validate us or reinforce the stories that we're telling to keep the structure of our unworthiness into place and perpetuate the shaming cycle. But it takes a strong woman, a a woman who really desires to break that cycle of self-shaming and self-abuse and negative self-talk and transform that inner critic into your inner cheerleader.
Why do we struggle to see the light inside ourselves? What do you think is going on?
I think we are looking in comparison to all the things outside of ourselves. We're not taught how to look inside. We're taught how to look outside. Look out this window. Look over here. Look at this television show. Look at this magazine. The way we're educated is all about outside of self. We're not taught to look inside of self. And so through that way of educating and through years and time, that's how we've been trained. We're not trained at an early age to look at ourselves in the mirror and say the things that we love. Our parents even say, your hair looks ratty. This looks terrible. Fix that, fix that. This perfectionism epidemic that women have as well. So when we're focused on that, how are we going to learn to look for anything else besides that? So I feel like that is a huge piece as why we don't know how to look for our light, because we're taught to look for what's wrong so we can fix it. And living in a world of consumerism that they bank on you feeling shitty. They bank on us having poor self-image. They make so much money on us feeling like we're not enough and unworthy. It's great to dress up and wear makeup and do all the things because it enhances our mood and we're using it for creativity and expression. But when we think we need to get our blowout and we need to wear makeup and we need all these things, that's when we're going into consumerism and they're making money and banking off of us because we're buying into the misidentification of who we are and the misbelief that we're not enough and need things outside of ourselves. So re-educating ourselves into realizing we're the ones we've been waiting for. We're the perfect icon and role model for ourselves because there's no one else on the planet that is us. No one can tell me what's the most beautiful thing for me or who I'm supposed to be or comparison. There's no one that's me. The grass is not always greener. The grass is the greenest where you water it. And we need to learn to pour that water and nurture ourselves.
And is that how you reclaimed your safety and you reclaimed yourself?
I reclaimed myself and I reclaimed my safety by declaring wholeheartedly that I am going to honor my heart, my body, and I'm going to create healthy boundaries for myself to hold that container of myself precious. And that is a part of how I reclaimed it. And then I started to go into an inquiry and an exploration. And what I did was I went through actually a sexual healing ceremony that helped me reclaim the perspective I had on my body, that I was holding on for 20 years of shame, that I was broken and that I was ugly and holding this genital shame. And the way that I reclaimed it was reconnecting to my genitals, reconnecting to my yoni. And really what I find in my years of experience is that so many women across the board don't have a connection to our genitals. We're not even looking down there. We don't even have a name for her down there. We're disconnected or disgusted or judging or shaming the most vulnerable part of our essence as a woman. And so I reclaim that power by developing a new relationship with my body and specifically my feminine parts, and reclaiming the power, feeling my power, working my pleasure practices and sexuality practices, and reclaiming my perception of I'm not unworthy because this man threw $5 at me, or because I have this image that I am disfigured. I started learning and educating myself about the different anatomy types of the female genitalia. I started looking, I started being in the inquiry, I started reconnecting, I started doing mirror work and actually looking and building a relationship with her. And what I found out was, wow, this is actually like first brain, gut connected to my internal organs. And what, most women probably don't know, which I'm going to share, is you have the same tissue, the same DNA makeup in your cervix as you do in your throat lyrics. So if you are cut off in your connection to your genitals, to your sexuality, you're cutting off a part of your voice and your expression. It is directly correlated. And that is how I reclaimed my sexuality, reclaimed my feminine power, was in a very bold way through my sexuality. And it makes so much sense given where my awakening came from and where my biggest trauma came from, was being in a feminine physical form.
So is it safe to say that if we do not look at our core chakra, the chakra down here, if we don't pay attention to what's going on, we don't love on that part of ourselves, we don't explore, we don't tap into it, no matter what that looks like, that we are blocking ourselves from such a gift, from abundance, from life. If we are not loving on it, connecting it, seeing it, giving it power, giving it beauty, letting it just be a part of us, right? I think there's so many women who we feel like we kind of have to stuff it down for some reason, what we've grown up with in this culture. And when we can just connect with it, that we are literally have that possibility of changing our life.
Yes, you literally have that possibility. And you said it so beautifully. When we connect to that part, have it be a part of us. If we leave any part out, then we're not fully aligned. And there's always going to be some blockage or separation. And it's a next level of spiritual maturation to do the work around our sexuality. And it's what's being asked and what's needed of us as women at this time and age, because it's going to help birth the next generation. And if we as women are not doing the work around that and connecting to that, know that we birth the next 7 generations of lineage. We come from and we're birthed from 7 generations of lineage behind us. We have the power to change the vibration, the programming, the imprinting, the epigenetics of our future generation by what we think and what we feel. That imprints in vitro into the children that we would produce and create, or into whatever abundance or matter, physical form that we create. We're imprinting. So is it safe to say? Yes, it's safe to say. And I would say that it's beyond safe to say it's a necessity at this time.
I think that some women are thinking, well, what does that even look like? I don't even know what that looks like. I've been so disconnected from that part of myself. What does that look like? It could be lighting candles. It could be taking a bath. It could be listening to like Sabrina Claudio, which is, one of my favorites, what I like to do. But what are some other things that could be like, give us some.
Well, notice all of those things still did not even address your sexuality. Taking a bath, that's sensual. Lighting a candle, that's sensual. I'm talking about your sexual energy. We know that there's Reiki energy, right? We know there's universal energy, but you literally have sexual life force energy inside of your body. So if we don't take the time to understand, to build a relationship, to get to know that energy and start to feel safe and comfortable feeling those feelings versus repressing it, lighting candles and doing all those things are not going to help. What's going to help is taking a mirror and actually going down there and looking at her straight up. I'm getting to the core root of it. Take a mirror and look and notice what your thoughts are. It's ugly, it's dirty, it's wrong, it's whatever those thoughts are. Maybe, oh, it's beautiful. I didn't see that. I didn't have it. Literally creating a new dialogue. Step 2, practicing seeing her as gorgeous and beautiful and changing the narrative. Step 3, creating a masturbation practice as a meditative practice. So being able to use touch and use your arousal and your pleasure and actually bring your awareness and mindfulness to when the energy is building and the energy is arousing. And then are you cleansing? Are you holding? Are you scared? That's an indicator. Breathe, relax, soften, rock your hips. You're building a new relationship with the actual energy you're experiencing inside of yourself.
Beautiful. It's like we need to understand that sexual energy is life force energy. They're the same thing. They're not separate, right?
Not
You are
separate.
channeling your divine life force energy. That is it, the root, right? It
Yes.
doesn't have to be this thing when you think masturbation that it's one thing. No, it's you're literally connecting with your divine power and your energy and your life force.
Yes, yes, yes. That's exactly what it is. And it's getting comfortable with all the narratives of shaming or pleasure. And it's interesting because it's like it's our pleasure to take back, to not feel
Mm,
ashamed. There's so many clients that I have that are not comfortable with touch, or imagine if you're with a partner and you don't like their touch, or you're uncomfortable, or you're self-conscious about the way you look. That's going to block your intimacy. That's
mm,
going to block how deep you can actually open and receive your partner. So it's doing that work for yourself to get comfortable with all the ins and outs of you, multiple ways you can experience pleasure or orgasms and power in your body, the different energy surges that can happen. I mean, we have 8,000 nerve endings on our clitoris, 8,000 on that little beautiful point. We are designed, literally designed for pleasure. And yet we're in a society that cuts off our genitals and shames our genitals because it doesn't understand and is afraid of how much power we can channel, because the energy is just shamed and misunderstood and has been misused in the past. We come from a time where we've used that in a way of gain and manipulation, and also in a society that over sexualizes it in a very pornographic way. And now it's looked at in this way that's so disconnected from the divine,
yes.
when it's the most natural thing. It is our nature, and it is the most innocent and pure in its truest form. And
Incredible.
that's the power.
That is the power. Beautiful. So if you could look back 10 years ago and give yourself one piece of advice that would save you years of searching, what would it be?
Well, considering 10 years ago was when I was working with my diagnosis, like I have so many different things. It's like, you are worthy, you are enough. I love you and accept you exactly as you are. And I'm sorry that you've ever seen yourself any differently. And I want you to know that all of the trauma, all of your trials, all of your tribulations, thank you for being so strong. Thank you for carrying me to where you are. But I'm going to let you know that that's not going to take you to the next level, that your body has so much wisdom for you that is waiting for you to tap into her, and that it is safe for you to be in your feminine power. Be kind, be compassionate as you explore it, but be big and be bold and be brave, and thank you.
Okay, final question. So at the end of the day, when we catch ourselves emotionally eating, what do you think we're really craving?
Connection. We're craving connection. We're craving to feel connection to the divine within ourselves.
No words. No words, girlfriend. Thank you for sharing, for being vulnerable, for breaking down these walls that so many of us carry, for creating a safe space, for giving a voice to so many that may have lost theirs in childhood trauma. Thank you for talking about the importance of this. It's being
Mm.
left out of the equation for way too long. And I know I've struggled with it in the past. And again, there's probably so many women going, yep, I feel you on that. And even if it's just one step to slow down, to be
Yes.
present, to find love for yourself, find gratitude for this amazing, divine, beautiful being that we are, we can just, and I'm getting chills, we can just start to find ourselves again and step into that powerful force that we are born to be. And you have just, you are such a beautiful soul, Josefina. Thank you for being a part of this. Just one of the best interviews by far, hands down.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love being in this conversation with you. And I love sharing my story as medicine to help empower and inspire and educate, because education is so scarce these days. And so I'm happy to help share and educate. It's so needed. And thanks for creating the space to having this conversation. And I'm so happy. I'm so proud of you, girl. You're just rising. It's just like, I'm so happy. So happy. And thanks for
Oh,
everyone for listening to this and watching this and maybe listen back and take some notes and take some small steps. But again, a feminine approach to this, the very last caveat, don't go at this with your masculine and like, let's go get it. Let me do all the things right now to like reclaim.
mhm.
No, step by step, slow down,
Yeah.
one small step, take a 3-foot toss, something attainable, then do the next thing. Have so much compassion as you move through your process. You know, it's an evolutionary journey. It's a marathon. This is not just a quick race.
Beautiful.